Welcome to the Cincy Postcast. I'm your host, Kevin Wallace, and before we get into today's episode, I want to tell you about our sponsor, Streetside Brewery, one of the best Cincinnati breweries you can find, folks. They are so good. Huge fan of all of their beers. Love the tap room. I try to get there as often as I can. Great place to watch a Reds game, by the way. The environment is just so chill and relaxed. They have a great patio that's pet friendly, the patio only, mind you. But they always have food trucks and things. And this coming weekend, they got some events coming up. One of my favorite things that they do, they constantly have live music. Tim Snyder is playing Saturday, 3 to 6. You got Michael T. and Friends playing from 7 to 10 on Saturday, again, June 29th. And then again on Sunday, you got Kyle English from 3 to 6 on Sunday. Don't forget, 9 a.m., Formula One watch party as well, Austrian Grand Prix. There's some good stuff going on always at Streetside. Huge fans of theirs. Thank you so much to Streetside for sponsoring this episode. If you want to check out some of these events, you head on over to 4003 Eastern Avenue, Columbia, Tusculum, and you can check them out there. But if you can't make it down, you can always buy their beer the next time you end up at the store buying beer for your next event, hangout, or just chilling out, whatever. So again, huge thank you to Streetside. Huge thank you to you for buying some Streetside beer. And on today's episode, sure, it was not a pretty night for soccer for FCC, but hope and help may be coming. Weston McKennie to FC Cincinnati? What? Is this real? Is this actually happening? What is the deal with this latest rumor? We also, sure, we touch on the game, but we touch more on what's going to happen with the center backs. What happens with this team going forward now? It's going to be tough without Hagglund. Obi gets a red card. How does this team perform over the next couple of weeks with Miles Robinson still away with the US men's national team? We get into all of that. And then in part 3, we bring on the intern to address him not knowing who the Cincinnati Royals are. We touch on some Patreon questions as well. You put it all together, I think you got yourselves a pretty good Cincy Postcast. Joining me to talk about all of that and more, I'm joined by two gentlemen still recovering from the match over the weekend. Joined by the Chief, joined by Grayson. Grayson, how you doing? I don't know what to say here. I was going to ask you, what was the worst thing that happened on Saturday?
The worst thing that happened,
I'll let you interpret it however you would like.
I guess the worst thing that happened was the commentator saying that Weston McKennie visited TQL Stadium during this international window.
He said worst thing, not best thing. Worst thing. The connection might have gotten a little fuzzy there over the Zoom.
But the worst thing that happened was Mick Hagglund's injury being so bad and so clear that they immediately just said he broke his fibula. They didn't even...
There's no fake medical scans.
They weren't even cagey about it.
Right.
Yeah, there was not even, we're having him evaluated, we're going to check again tomorrow. It was nope. There was no waiting to find out what was wrong there.
It was not good. He carried to the sidelines and then immediately sat down. You knew it wasn't good. And then the stretcher. Oh boy. Chief, same question to you. And you have to pick something else now. What was the worst thing that happened on Saturday?
I don't know. Caleb Porter got to walk out of TQL Stadium happy. That always leaves a sour taste in your mouth.
Did he shush anybody? Do we have anybody on shush watch?
I didn't see anybody shushing anyone. I don't know, just pick one that, Caleb Porter walks out of TQL Stadium happy. Hagglund's injury, that's obviously I can't pick that, but Yeah, that's it too.
That's rough.
Another game where just an absolute nobody decides, yeah, I'm going to be an offensive superhero for one night.
Obi's red card feels pretty bad.
Yeah, Obi's red card feels bad, but it's also just...
It's like the fourth worst thing that happened.
No, it was a Murphy's Law game. This was an everything that could go wrong did go wrong kind of game. And it Obi's red card, it wasn't even harsh. It was a clear card foul that was completely unnecessary. And it was in a moment when the FC was finally starting to claw back into this game a little bit, where they'd made some halftime substitutions. They'd gotten some more dynamic players out onto the field, and they didn't need that. You didn't need to go a man down there. They just scored the goal with Assad. It couldn't have been more than 5 minutes later that Obi gets the second yellow card, and it was just that would have been the cherry on top of a dumb game. But then the Hagglund injury happens, and it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. But we'll get into it, but I don't think this is as bad as people think it is. I know there was a lot of doom and gloom after this game. And yeah, you can be forgiven for some of it just because of how things went down. But I think the overall takeaway from this for me is everybody needs to relax. Everybody needs to relax a little bit about this. The sky is not falling. I'm aware we're going to talk about the depth issues. But overall, I think everybody needs to relax a little after this loss.
I just want to point out how terrifying it is that Chief is the one trying to talk all of us down off of a ledge. That's how you know things are not going well. Well, I'll answer my own question here and say the worst thing that happened on Saturday was I was walking around TQL Stadium. I'm behind the Bailey. I see somebody wearing a 1 of the 12 t-shirt.
Oh, dear.
I walk over, offer him a big fist bump, say, hey, man, love the shirt. They were very confused. They had no idea what was going on.
Nice.
I had no idea how to react.
You surprised someone in the middle of it. I hope to God it wasn't given to somebody as a gift that doesn't actually listen to the show. That'd be the worst gift of all time. To get merch from a podcast you don't listen to.
Especially because it wasn't like the, fuck Columbus shirt, which like you could see like random people buying
right.
on the off chance. But no, actually, I do not want to disparage this person. They reached out on Twitter the next day and were like, it didn't dawn on me until later that like what had just happened. I was like, yeah, no, that's fair.
You wear your 1 of the 12 shirt. You got to have your head on a swivel for a what's up from one of the fine members of the post-Cincy staff.
So yeah, I gave him a fist bump. I know I could have redeemed that at a point later, but in the moment it felt right, and I don't think it was right. So
it was hot. Nobody's on their game right now in weather like this. It's tough for everybody. Tough on the players. It's tough on the fans, and I think we don't acknowledge enough how tough it is on the fans to sit through games in weather like this. The stadium gets hot. It's not as much fun drinking at temperatures like this. You overheat a little quicker. You start to get a little more self-conscious about the various odors emanating from you and around your person. It's not great. It's tough. If you toughed it out in the Bailey and you were going hard for 90 plus minutes this past weekend or on Wednesday, God love you. That's real work being done by the fans right there. We don't pat ourselves in the back enough as a fan base. So giving you an opportunity, giving you permission right now to pat yourself on the back. Unless you're driving, in which case keep your hands on the wheel. No,
then you got to use both hands to pat yourself on the back. I was watching
buy a nicer car. If you can't take your hand off the steering wheel, buy a nicer. I'm just kidding. Even if you have a nice car, please keep your hands on the steering wheel.
You can buy your way out of this problem.
I had a long drive today, and I saw no fewer than 5 fairly serious accidents on the highway. like, please keep your hands on the wheel.
Ugh. No bueno. I had an idea there. That's what it was. I was watching the Reds before FCC kicked off. The Reds are at home against the Boston Red Sox. Not an opponent you get to see all that often. Man, Great American Ballpark was like half empty or half full,
You
depending on how you want to look at it. But it was not very full. And then you get to TQL Stadium, and man, packed to the gills to watch a rotated squad play the last place team in the East. It was nice. Yeah, I agree. Like that's the sort of fan base that might attract, I don't know, a starter for Juventus to your club. That is impressive. So
I
sadly,
guess,
yeah.
This game is a bummer. I don't know that we need to go blow by blow and recap everything. It was a heavily rotated squad that goes out to play, and you kind of had to expect this with the amount of minutes this team has logged in the last 3 games, I think in 10 days. Does that sound right?
Yes.
Yeah, because they played Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday. They played in just brutal...
So 3 games in 8 days.
8 days. Yeah, shit. So, they have logged a ton of minutes in really, really oppressive weather. And, they've got to manage for a full season. They're already shorthanded because they've got Miles on international duty. They got some players that are coming back to fitness. They've been riding a certain, group of players pretty hard. And eventually you had to know some of them were going to get some time off. It just had to, you have to pick and choose your spots.
Yeah.
And so the lineup comes out, and you already get a sense a little bit that, yeah, this is going to be a fight. It's annoying. It's also annoying that so much of this league is when you catch teams. Yes. And right now, for some inexplicable reason, because they are not a talented team, for some inexplicable reason, New England is riding a 4-game winning streak. And it's just annoying when bad teams are playing well when you draw them. If they would have drawn this team... Well, they did play this team a couple weeks ago, right? And they beat the tar out of them, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say beat the tar out of, but they won on the road.
Yeah, and it was a non-competitive road game is what I recall about that game.
Yeah. 2-1 on March 17th. It was Veroni getting a 62nd minute goal there. If I remember correctly, that is the one where Sergio Santos basically played Veroni in.
Oh, this was is this the kickback game?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, it's all relevant though, just because you have to take this result with sort of not a grain of salt, but like you have to understand the context of this result. And the context of this result is that this is a match where they were starting Yamil Assad, where I think we said last week we like what he's doing, and we don't need to see him do more of what he's doing, but.
Yeah, it was great because, Chief, you said we definitely don't need to see Assad start ever. And Grayson immediately said, well, we'll probably see him start once or twice this year. He started the very next game.
God damn it, Grayson.
Well, we keep dancing around it, so let me just run through the lineup. And this was a real highlight of the night, was looking at this lineup and trying to figure it out. But it was Celentano in goal, of course, DeAndre Yedlin, your left center back, Ian Murphy, your central center back, and Alvis Powell, your right center back. There's only one actual center back in those 3. Emil Assad getting the start as the left wing back, with Luca Orishano as the right wing back. Buka, Wobodo, Acosta, the midfield trio, with Acosta ahead of the other 2. And we went with the youngsters back up top, Kevin Kelsey and Dado Valenzuela. On the bench, you had Yuya Kubo, who you could have reasonably seen as someone starting this game. Nick Hagglund, Kip Keller also on the bench. Guys that you might have expected to start, but did go about 100 minutes in 100-degree weather just a couple of nights before.
Halsey on the bench too. I mean, Halsey lets you...
Halsey on the bench?
Potentially, like they played Halsey on the right, so like potentially Halsey or Kubo starting would have allowed you to start Orishano on the left. But,
Yeah.
They did what they did.
And Bupenza, once again, second match in a row on the bench for Aaron Bupenza. More on him, I guess, a little bit later on.
Not much more.
Not much more. Maybe this is the moment to mention it. He did get into this game. The proof of life, check. He actually did have a really good play with Lucho heading the ball right back into Lucho's path. That looked really nice.
He had another touch in the box I thought was potentially something. It just didn't,
Yeah,
come off.
You get little glimpses of what might have been or what last year was like towards the end. But man, that might have been it. How do we want to do this? Do we want to go blow by blow, or do we want to just
no?
Let's talk about the vibes of this game. I think
let's talk about the center backs, because that's really the big story coming out of this match. Is that Nick Hagglund, as we said, breaks his tibia or fibula?
Fibula.
Fibula. Not a scientist.
His tibula.
He's going to change it every time.
Yeah. I don't know. It's his leg. He broke his leg.
There you go.
They said his fibula.
So Nick Hagglund breaks his leg. It was a pretty gruesome injury in that they immediately air cast it, and he went off on a stretcher around the side and straight down the tunnel, where I assume he went directly to a medical facility of some sort. He went off right by where I was sitting for this match. And he had his hands over his face, and he knew it was bad. It was not the usual giving a thumbs up to the crowd, waving or anything like that. This was a man that was in pain, and this was a man that I think, and we'll probably get more information as we go on this, I'm kind of concerned about the career of Nick Hagglund at this point.
But
me like too. It's too soon. Too soon to speculate on that. But for a guy that just came back from a pretty brutal injury last year to get another one in rapid succession, it's rotten luck. It's brutal luck. We all feel terrible for Nick. He's a guy who we've talked about it before, has seen the ups and seen the downs of this club. He has played his way into some very important minutes in this club's history. Seems like an integral part of the locker room and the culture turnaround of this club. And it's just brutal to see this be the way he goes off the field for a second consecutive season. But now they're in a position where they have lost Matt Miazga to what appears to be, according to what the latest reporting was, which I think that broke after we recorded the last episode.
Yeah.
Grayson, you had said that you had sources talking about Miazga needing surgery. In fact, that ended up being the case. The team reveals that Miazga needs surgery, that there's a knee injury involved with him, and that his timeline of recovery is months. And I think the number that we were hearing thrown around was somewhere between around 4 months, where maybe he could be back by the October-November timeframe if things are on the good side of his timetable.
Yeah.
So Miazga's done for the year. Hagglund, by all indications that you would see here, is probably done for the year, I would think, with this kind of an injury. If not significant time, the 4 to 6 month recovery range as well.
Yeah.
You've got Miles Robinson out on international duty and not playing, but he's on international duty for the foreseeable future,
and potentially
the Olympics.
Yep.
So right now, as we sit here, the FC Cincinnati that plays 3 center backs has on its roster healthy right now Kip Keller and Ian Murphy. And that's a problem. So I guess in lieu of straight blow by blow of this game, Kevin or Grayson, what's this team going to do on the back line?
So to set the table, because Chief, you kind of mentioned this earlier, they have 5 games before the transfer window opens. The transfer window opens July 18th. So they can't bring any new players into the team until July 18th. Okay. And then there's also a game July 20th. So realistically, you're looking at 6, I think. Likely 6 games before any new center backs see the field.
Yeah.
It's Dallas, DC United, Miami with no Messi, Charlotte, Chicago, and then the last one is Red Bulls away.
So there's 2 decent games there?
So I would definitely circle this July 3rd DC United game.
Yeah.
Because you roll out DeAndre Yedlin, Ian Murphy, and Alvis Powell against Christian Benteke.
Oh, Jesus.
That might be double-digit goals.
You might legitimately have to put like Kevin Kelsey just marking him and just play with a man down up front.
Like Inter Miami, they're not necessarily going to go over the top as much. They do have Campana, who's very dangerous in the air.
Yeah.
Charlotte, I'm not sure is that big of an issue. Or I mean, all of this is an issue, right?
Right.
But it's levels.
So in general, it was a pretty cushy run of games.
It's not cushy, but it could be worse. It's not the worst run of games you could have in this situation.
Of those teams, Charlotte, New York, and Miami are the only teams above the playoff line right now.
Right. So, and, Dallas hasn't been great, although their best player is a tall striker.
Yeah.
So that's,
the matchups aren't great, especially against
that's not
DC
a great matchup
in Dallas. Yeah.
And then you potentially get Miles back for some of that.
At least for a little bit.
Right. I don't know when, but so the US beat Bolivia tonight, right? So
yeah. And unfortunately, they looked pretty good doing it too.
Yeah, Bolivia hadn't. I think this stat like Bolivia hasn't won a game in like 30 Copa America matches.
Yeah, Bolivia is not a very good team. That's not the measuring stick.
So the quarterfinals are going to be July 4th, 5th, and 6th. Okay. So if, God forbid, the U.S. gets knocked out in the quarterfinals.
Fingers crossed.
Certainly would never wish for such a thing.
It'd be a shame.
Miles misses
a real shame.
3 games. Dallas, DC, and Inter Miami. If I just close the window, I think there's it, but if they make it to the semifinals, there's also like the third place game. So like losing in the semifinals doesn't really help you,
right?
So he misses. He's maybe back for Chicago Fire.
Okay.
But the nice thing is, after that July 20th game against Red Bulls, we don't have a league game until August 24th.
Operation Punt the League Cup, baby.
So
we've always been an anti-Leagues Cup podcast.
So that's a lot of time to sort out your transfer window, because your next league game is not until after the transfer window has closed.
Okay.
So what we do is we just become huge Monterey fans for the Leagues Cup and turn the podcast into a Monterey podcast.
It's always
and just not care.
Now, a decision that they'll have to make is what to do with Miazga.
Yeah.
Because there's a season ending
Grayson, you should explain this to people. So what are the roster mechanisms available to us when losing such a valuable piece of the team like Matt Miazga?
So teams can place a player on the season ending injury list.
Okay.
That player then becomes ineligible for all competitions the rest of the year. Okay.
So he can't, even if he were to be healthy for MLS Cup final, this designation keeps him off of it.
He's out. Yep.
Okay.
Tough.
So you get roster relief, meaning you get like the open roster spot.
Okay.
And you can also get budget relief. If you meet certain parameters. Budget relief meaning the player you sign is not going to count additionally on top of that injured player on your budget.
Right.
Okay.
So if you had a player making $500,000 a year, you mark this designation on him, and now you get his roster spot back, and you get $500,000 in salary to go spend presumably on a replacement.
Yep. So you have to formally place them on the season-ending injury list prior to the opening of the secondary transfer window. That's July 18th, so they have a little less than a month to decide if that was something they're considering with Matt. They have to make that decision in a little under a month. The salary budget charge to the replacement player cannot be more than the player who suffered the season-ending injury.
Which is fine because Matt's on a max TAM deal.
Well, so that's not his salary budget charge, though. So there's a maximum salary budget charge
What's
of
it
like
the
$680,000.
Right.
And if Matt, as being a TAM player, you use TAM to buy his budget charge down to the maximum salary budget charge or lower.
So you can't replace him.
I don't know that you get any of that TAM back. It doesn't really seem to say that. So I'm thinking
you can strong arm MLS. You can strong arm MLS into letting us happen because it's not specified in the rules.
Well, I think you can probably, if you have enough allocation money, to buy them down to that budget charge. But I don't think you get the allocation money from Matt back. But I don't know. I've never, I could not really find the answer to this. So I don't think we get to just but I would be a little surprised if they could just go ahead and sign somebody making like $1.5 million and just apply Matt's allocation money to that new player. But it's like if it's a designated player, right? Or you can replace a designated player with a designated player. You could replace a U22 with a U22
because it's that roster spot. Because
that roster spot has a salary budget charge attached to it.
Right.
Okay. And you can only sign one such replacement player per MLS season.
So you can't replace him with two cheaper center backs, let's say.
Right. Or if like Miles Robinson got a season-ending injury, you could put them on the list and get roster relief, meaning like they don't count against your senior roster.
You don't get their salary.
But you only get budget relief for one of them. Gotcha. And budget relief is going to be like the big...
That's fucking dumb.
The big restriction.
For those of you who might need a little bit of help keeping track with this, I always think of it this way. And if this is a bad analogy, please call it out. I always think of it as this. If you're buying, let's say you're paying for a meal with your debit card, right? And you're going to pay a $50 meal and you know that it's going to come out of your bank account. You're going to see the $50 come out of the bank account and you'll see that line item on your bank statement pretty clearly. But if you had like mowed grandma's lawn earlier that day and had $20 cash and you paid that when you're paying your dinner tab, it's only going to show up as a $30 charge on the bank account. That's the salary budget charge in this case. And the cash for mowing grandma's lawn, that's GAM and TAM, baby. So
or like if you have I have a gift card that will cover $150 of my meal, and I got to put the rest of it on this credit card here.
Yeah.
So let's say I go to what's like a really common store that everybody probably shops at.
Target.
Let's say I go to Vori.
I knew he was going to do this.
Yeah.
And
I fell into that one.
I buy a shirt that's like 20% off for the day, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And I take it home. It doesn't fit, or my wife doesn't like it.
Tough scenes.
And I take it back to the store, and let's say that for whatever reason they're like, we can only give you store credit. I don't get store credit for like the sticker price of the shirt. I get sticker credit for the price I paid.
Yeah,
that's actually a good analogy.
So like I could buy a different, cheaper shirt that's worth like what I actually, am credited as paying for the shirt, but I can't like buy that shirt unless I also have like an extra 20% to cover the difference.
Tough scenes.
I love this. Yeah, that's exactly it, though. So, yeah, there you go. It's all about the charge. So, to put it simply, we can't actually go out and replace Matt Miazga with a designated player center back. That is not allowed by these rules. If it's a 1-for-1 season-ending injury to designated player, that's not to say the team doesn't also just go out and buy a designated player center back.
I mean, you could sign a U22 center back. You could sign a DP center back if they open up enough DP spots. That's kind of just like a separate thing from the season-ending injury list.
Okay.
So I think where this is interesting to me is that before Hagglund is injured, I think you have the ability to play wait and see with Miazga and say, well, we'll wait and see on the season-ending injury front because, if there's an opportunity to have Miazga back for the playoffs, obviously we want to have Miazga back for the playoffs. That still might be the route they go. I don't know. But I think now it puts more pressure on you to put the season-ending injury designation on Miazga to get the opportunity to sign, a center back for whatever budget charge you're allowed to. If you can use all of the TAM and you get all the TAM back that you bought his salary down with, you have an opportunity to add a really good player. Even without that, you still have the opportunity to add a pretty decent player on a $680,000, wage bill. You don't get that same relief from Hagglund. If you put Hagglund on season-ending injury, all you're going to get back is, I think, about $100,000 because he's on a pretty minimal contract with FC Cincinnati. So there's really not a lot of relief.
And then you're stuck using that, for the replacement.
Yeah. And so I think your odds of getting a decent center back increase with the more money that you have. So I wonder if this doesn't force FC Cincinnati's hands to say, you know what, the dream of Matt Miazga being ready for the second round of the MLS Cup playoffs for the playoff push. I wonder if this doesn't sort of put a lid on that.
So I have a real dumb question.
That's usually my job on this podcast. But continue.
I have a real dumb question, but I think something that we hadn't acknowledged. Okay. Which I think I want to say ahead of time. I have I'm pretty sure this was like a fairly preposterous thing.
Okay.
But there was a rumor. I think maybe mentioned on CST that like Miami had floated a trade of like Robinson for their U22 center back and, some other player. Would this change your thinking for any kind of trade where, if Robinson's going to be gone, like for the Olympics, you trade him for another guy who's got a lower budget charge and is going to be available. And that also opens up your options for what else you can do in the window. I still don't do it really under any circumstances, because not least of which is like, I want to throw up by any thought that they're like making Miami better. But just to put out, food for thought.
I don't do it. Not the least of which because one of the things that like sort of I felt the need to put out after this is that you cannot, in a salary cap league that is as restrictive as MLS, you cannot limit your thinking to just 2024. You've got to think about what does 2025, 2026 look like. And it's why people were asking, oh, well, if you move Bupenza, is the move now to get a DP center back? And the answer is still no. It's the worst value proposition for a designated player spot. It's the worst way to use a designated player spot is if it isn't center back, it's goalkeeper. Like using a DP on one of those two positions is just a bad value proposition. You're going to lose out every time. And similarly with this, like, would it be tempting to have, not have to worry about Miles in terms of the Olympics and being gone? Yeah, but you've also got Miles under contract for 2025. And I don't see any reality where you get a better player back for Miles Robinson than Miles Robinson will be for this team in 2025 and will be for this team in 2024 down the stretch if they can somehow weather the storm on this.
And
go ahead, Kevin.
I was just going to say, I'd say, in addition, who knows what kind of Matt Miazga you get back. You can't bank on having an MLS best defender next year, even if the surgery goes well and everything. Like, you can only destroy a man's knee before you start seeing knock-on effects. He's probably be a little slower. He's not going to be as quick. It's going to take some time to get back. Yeah, I'm not ready to give up on who is immediately now your best center back.
So before we get into sort of replacements, because replacements is going to lead into conversations about the window. You've got, but what you're count, Grayson, 3-4 games where you're going to have only 2 healthy center backs.
At least 3.
Yeah.
Potentially
6.
Well, potentially a lot if he goes.
I think potentially 4.
Okay.
Okay.
He'd be back by July 17th. No problem.
Yeah. I think so.
Yeah.
And then the window opens and the League's Cup starts. Okay, just for those games, what does this team do on the back line? Now, there's options that they have here at this point. If they keep the same formation, which is the back 5 formation, then the obvious answer would probably be, I guess you continue with Kip Keller and Ian Murphy as center backs, with Keller in that central role. They like him there a little more than, I think, playing Murphy in the center.
They like Murphy in the center, but I don't know that they like Murphy in the center and then Keller or Yedlin on the left.
Yeah.
Either way,
as much as like Keller center, Murphy left, Yedlin
or Powell on the right.
Or Powell on the right, really.
So that would be sort of option 1, is some combination of Keller and Murphy along with Powell or Yedlin. And then with Yedlin being out, then you have Halsey or Kubo moving over to that right wing back spot. Or is this a moment where you start thinking about changing formations to something that would only play with 2 center backs and play to the fact that you only have 2 healthy ones?
I've thought about this, and I think the answer is you only got 2 center backs no matter what. That, like, going to 2 at the back doesn't solve the problem, because how the roster has been built out is that all of your outside backs are pacey winger types. Like, DeAndre Yedlin is the closest you'll get to a proper fullback, but Yamil Assad was an attacking winger his whole career. Orishano, same story. Powell still feels like an attacker that has been pulled back, although he has played more fullback in his career. And Brett Halsey, as we've heard, views himself as much more of an attacker, wants to get forward. So to suddenly ask Orishano to do a lot more defensive responsibilities sounds a lot worse than asking Powell or potentially Yedlin to play center back. Or, as we floated last episode, it's looking more and more tempting now. You train Wobodo to play center back when he's not suspended from the team. I think that's where I've ended up. It doesn't make sense to upend everything unless your acquisitions this window are going to reflect a change in formation. I don't know.
Yeah, I think I agree with Kevin on that. Like, I view it as there being like basically 3 options, right? One is Keller, Murphy, Powell as your back 3. 2 is Keller, Murphy, Agedu, somebody from FCC2 on a short-term loan here or there as your back 3.
I mean, you could also send Hagglund to the SEI for roster relief and sign someone from FCC2 straight up on a league minimum contract.
Yeah, I think we have the supplemental roster space to do that.
We should have 1 or 2 spots.
I don't think we're using all of our roster spots. I could be wrong.
Yeah. And if it is only just 4 games, you could do a couple of short-term loans to limp along the way there too. So,
and then the other is changing the formation. And I think changing the formation is kind of superficially tempting because, Yedlin has played in the back four plenty. Keller and Murphy, two big center backs. I don't know if they are really... I don't know if I trust them to play in a back four, but let's just say for the sake of argument, you get, they're two true center backs. And then what you do at left back, I guess it's Brett Halsey, closest thing to a true left back that you have on the roster. And then you move
Isaiah Foster gets a run out here.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know, like we could have, but with somebody like Foster or somebody like a Gaidu,
we would have seen them by now if they trusted them.
There were opportunities yesterday, right, to see them, and there have been other opportunities to see them on the field, and they haven't been put there. Maybe Noonan is just hyper reluctant to a fault to trust new players.
Well, don't look now. Malik Pinto apparently got hurt in the FCC2 game tonight. So
that could.
So, but I think ultimately what seems to make the most sense to me is stick with who I think are your better players that you have available, which is the back five of, Orshano, Keller, Murphy, Powell, and Yedlin. And then play as close to that midfield three. I guess next game it's Kubo,
has to
Buka, and Acosta, and then up top, Dotto and Kelsey again, right? Yeah. Because you at least have numbers back, and you have players in positions they've played. Although I don't know if Powell, when he re-signed here, thought he'd be playing as much center back as he has, but at the very least, he's somebody who has played that position a number of times at this level.
Yeah, it's just going to be... I think that there's always a temptation to switch formations. And I think most coaches will tell you, most coaches are less enamored with formations than fans are, I get the sense. And when you ask people that have coached this at a high level, they'll tell you we occasionally do play a back four. It's positionally fluid over the course of a game as to where players are, what players are doing, and it's game and situation specific as to how they line up. Fans get because we all play FIFA and Football Managers, this is the formation. Well, in practice, it's a little more complicated than that. But I think generally this team is set up to play with wingbacks. It's set up to play with a back five. I think that making a switch at this point, absent personnel changes in the window, doesn't make a lot of sense. And if you have the window open, you can go get personnel that fits the formation and the style of play this team has. So I get the sense, and to me, what makes the most sense is you just sort of cobble your back line together and trust the players that are in the positions that they play well, that you're going to have to step up and play a little harder to cover for the fact that we don't have the skill and we don't have the talent that we usually do at this area. And it's one of those things, too, where it's I don't think the sky is falling here. I just don't. Murphy and Keller are good. They're decent players. I mean, they're not Miazga and they're not Robinson, but they're still decent, well thought of, well pedigreed players. We have a coaching staff that's really, really good at getting the most out of players. And at the end of the day, you still got Lucho Acosta on the field. And even in this game last night, they're down a man. They're down two men at the end of this game because they'd run out of subs when Hagglund got hurt. And they still had opportunities at the end of the game with Acosta to win, to get a point out of the game. They were still dangerous going down the stretch. So I'm not as down as I was walking out of the stadium when I thought about it later. It's it's gonna suck for the next couple of weeks until we hit the window, but they're going to have options at the window. They're going to have options beyond the designated player replacement that we know is coming for Penza. They put Miazga on SEI. They have options there. They would have options anyway. They've got players on this team that are tradable assets. If they need to, they still have the one-time contract buyout, where if they were really serious about what's going on this year, I don't know if they want to do it, but like you can go to someone that's on a 1-year deal or on options and say, you know what? Sorry, like we need the salary relief or we need the roster relief.
I don't really know who that would be.
No.
Corey
the player
Baird.
I think you have to pay him a lot to go away. But
I mean, like Corey Baird is on a 2-year deal, isn't he?
He's on a 2-year deal. He's the name that makes sense, but he's on a 2-year deal.
Corey Baird, if he's not hurt, I got nothing against the guy. Like, I would love to have had him as an option, like last night or for plenty of times while he's been hurt. But like, given the state of the striker room and the expectation that you're bringing in a DP striker to replace Bupenza, Baird would be kind of a clear trade piece. Somebody who I think would have value.
Oh yeah.
In the league, but
you don't even need to get a lot back for him. You're just clearing roster space to sign somebody else. That's kind of the joy of soccer, is that your trades don't have to be, 1 for 1. Like, oh, we were fleeced on this deal because we didn't get enough GAM back for Corey Baird. Getting $1 of GAM back plus a salary spot, the salary spot may well be more valuable than any GAM that you get back if you can convert that position to a position of need, like on the back line.
Right. Or you're just looking for the Corey Baird of center backs. Like at the start of the year, you thought you needed the Corey Baird of strikers, and now you just need the Corey Baird of center backs, which for FC Cincinnati would have been Nick Hagglund. And now you just need to go find somebody else's fifth center back. It wouldn't have been Nick
Hagglund. It would be like
Kip Keller.
Wouldn't it be like Matt Hedges?
Well, I'm saying on FCC, our Corey Baird of center backs would have been our 5th best center back. And now we just need to go trade our 5th best striker for somebody else's 5th best center back. And yeah, Matt Hedges is a name that came up from Andrew Wiebe as somebody. He is currently in Austin, not getting a lot of playing time. He is somebody that this coaching staff and front office staff pitched to come to FC Cincinnati previously, and he turned it down.
Well, the reporting from Bogert on that was that FC Cincinnati was only willing to offer him a 1-year deal, and I think a couple of options on the back end.
Yeah,
and Toronto offered him, I think, 2 years guaranteed plus 2 option years, maybe just 1 option year. So he went to Toronto, but like mid-season was traded to Austin. And he's going to the end of that guaranteed deal this year as it is. And I'm looking at his season. He started the first 5 games for them, played full 90s, and only has played double-digit minutes 1 time since then, and he's been on the bench more than he's been on the field.
That's kind of our move, though, isn't it?
You take
distressed assets from Austin's back line, shine them up.
Healthy, rested. That's what we need.
Kip Keller and Matt Hedges. It's the all Austin FC reject back line. I'm in for it.
We looked at Austin, who had an objectively terrible season last year, and said, "We'll take your 2 worst center backs. Thanks, that'd be great."
It's like y'all can't. You don't know what you're doing. Just give us these guys. They clearly didn't. Like, you didn't know how to coach these people, so let us take care of it for you.
That does seem to be the move, though, is something like that to bring it in. Because, Chief, to your point, like, I almost wonder, too, how much of the pessimism is tied up with it being Nick Hagglund. And obviously, you don't want to take any knocks at center back, but I wonder if people would view this differently if it was Kip Keller that was injured and not Hagglund. That, like,
I think people would view it the same. Like, people feel bad for Nick. But like where we're at right now is I think that you'd feel bad for anyone, right? Because you just lost Miazga last weekend, right? And now you're losing another center back. And it's like, okay, this team was remarkably injury healthy for the majority of last year. They didn't lose a lot of first team minutes to injury last season, which is in any sports league how you succeed. It's injury luck as much as it is anything else. And so it does feel like there's a position group specifically that's being decimated on this team, which there is. But it's temporary. You're getting Miles back.
Right.
Like, I know it feels like we're never going to get Miles back, but you're getting Miles back. And the other thing, too, is that, long term, this is a situation. I put this out on Twitter, and I think I said it in the Discord, but that if the rule changes that we're hearing are a go from people like Bogert are passed by MLS at whatever their next meeting is, and this team opens up 2 more U22 spots, if I'm Chris Albright, I am on the phone to any team in the top 5 league over in Europe, or any team in the bigger teams in South America, or even Mexico, and saying, do you have anyone that you need to get minutes for that's young? Anyone. Especially you would even want to target teams that are like, you're looking at the back half of the Premier League, or teams that are going to be fighting and scrapping for points at the start of the year. And you say to them, look, you don't want to play these kids because you need to grind results out. You can't be developing players when you're fighting for your life. Give us your kids.
Yep.
Give us your best center back prospect. We'll give them minutes and we'll send them back to you in January so that they can be ready to play down the stretch for your season. And you'll have a player that is developed, that's had minutes, and is ready to keep you up in the Premier League or in Serie A or in La Liga. You'll have someone coming back. And, oh, by the way, if you need to see our bona fides, can we direct you to a young kid named Yerson Mosquera, who looked all world for Villarreal this year as he played through an entire season in La Liga?
Yeah. Made his way onto the Colombian national team, right? Like, yeah, that's definitely where this needs to be going next, especially with the U22 spots. Again, assuming they show up, like, I would really like to hear more about that, or when those rules are going to be implemented. But yeah, no, Chief, to your point, like, Miazga is the miss here. Like, the season wasn't going to be won or lost based on Nick Hagglund being healthy or the 5th center back being healthy. The replacement needs to be for Miazga just to get us by. And this is why guys like Keller were brought in this offseason, because you needed to shore up this position. And so I am in agreement that over time this will pan out. I'm confident in that. I think we need to go ahead and throw the League's Cup away. I think that's fine. I don't need to worry about that so much.
You probably need to at this point, if you want like your realistic level set. Your realistic level set is that it's going to be very, very difficult to stay in the Shield race unless the window is big. And unless they manage to really grind some results out over the next 3 to 4 games. If they can hold serve the next 3 to 4 games and, not lose multiples of those, a couple of wins, a couple of draws, maybe one loss there, you could be in position still. But like realistically now, with the amount of injuries that are hitting this team, you've got to say at this point, the focus remains MLS Cup and getting this team into an optimal place to make a push for the playoffs and make a playoff push. The Crew were not the best team in MLS at this point in last year's season. Famously, they got good at the window and they came together at the end of the year. That's where the goal remains right here. Would it have been fun to win the Shield again and award it to ourselves a second straight year? Yeah, but shit happens and you move on. And I, for one, I've had no reason at this point to doubt that the front office staff with Albright and his crew aren't going to be working on this issue. And This is not an ownership group. This is not a front office that is going to say we don't have the resources or we don't have the desire to get this problem fixed. This is not Philadelphia. Like, this team will be active to try and get this problem fixed, I think. Yeah.
To that point, Chief, I do want to say the end of this game was exciting. This was the most TST feeling MLS game I can remember watching. Like, it was honestly, like, I was a little inspired. In the 88th minute, Ian Murphy comes off and on comes Aaron Bupenza. And what I loved about this is this was chaos because we had no center backs on the field. We are down an extra man. So it is now 9 versus 11, and we were sticking it to them. We were pinning them back. This was fun. And sure, New England's trying to, hold on to their lead or whatever. I don't care. It's hard to do this down a man. It's hard to do this without a center back. This was fun. You saw Sergio Santos was deputizing as center back at certain points at the end of this game. This was exciting. And I loved that this team was not quitting, that I don't know about you guys, but I genuinely felt like Lucho Acosta was going to score at the end of this game. This team has that belief.
I said that to the missus. We were sitting watching this game. I'm like, I still think Lucho's got one in him. There were a couple of moments where he did a couple quick dribbles and a cut in, and I was like, I think we're going to get a point out of this game somehow. It would have been the most absurd result given everything that happened, but that's the level he's on right now. Is just you expect him to do something spectacular every time he touches the ball in the opponent's third. Yeah.
If you look on the FOTMob momentum meter, it is hilarious. The second half is damn near 100% FCC. There's 3 little poke throughs of New England having little spells of possession there, but it was all FCC in the second half. And sure, game state, blah, 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 whatever. I like to see that our team was trying, that we weren't on the defensive, that the defense wasn't the weak link that was being attacked by the other team, that this was a team that was still going to fight through its struggles and its misgivings that it had early on in the game. So I liked that about the team. And I think going forward, Murphy and Keller on the back line with, Powell or Yedlin back there will provide enough of a base that the rest of the team can get results. I'm a believer in that.
The one thing about the center backs that I had not, I guess, included in the earlier description, especially with Robinson, is whether he goes to the Olympics or not.
Yeah, what does that impact look like?
So I do not care if he goes to the Olympics. They're entirely during Leagues Cup.
Ah, okay.
We can punt that tournament if it makes him happy. The one sticking point is the U.S. plays its first game of the Olympics on July 24th in Marseille.
Okay.
I have not seen what the plans are for when the U.S. Olympic team is going to be traveling to France or getting together or whatever. If I'm FC Cincinnati, because you don't have to release him for the Olympics, you really don't. Can't we just make him play July 17th and July 20th, and then he can depart on the 21st to France?
There's an answer for this. It's the PJ again. Get him on the jet.
We'll be in New York. They get direct flights everywhere.
There'll be a direct flight every hour.
Yeah, you get the PJ though. You get the private jet.
Get the PJ.
Yeah. You can step up, you can land. You don't have to go through Charles de Gaulle. We'll land you at some airfield that only Carl has access to. You can step off the private jet, gaiters, full suit, and show these kids how professionals do soccer.
Here's the other thing about that. That July 24th game is against France. They don't need that game. They're not going to win that game. That's not the game that they have to win to advance out of their group.
So the Olympics is what, under 23 is the Olympics, right?
It's under 23 with 3 overage players, and for some unknown reason,
is there anyone under 22 he can bring back with him that would rate as a center back?
Ideally from the French national team.
I don't know. Just
probably not
recruit.
because they're talking about using 2 of their overage slots on center backs. So
I'm not just talking about us. I'm talking about other teams you're playing.
Other teams.
Can you get out there and do a little fucking recruiting while you're there? Slip some cash to some motherfuckers.
So I want to be you don't have to beat France to get out of this group. The other teams in the group are New Zealand and Guinea.
Oh, okay, yeah, whatever. You don't need the French game.
They don't need miles for that. Just get them in for the knockout rounds.
You don't need miles for the group at all.
You don't need miles for the team. at all. Let's be clear.
Yeah.
Actually, that reminds me of the old Gold Cup rules where you could call up like a completely different team for the knockout rounds.
Right. They used to call like MLS guys for the group stage, and then they bring in like a bunch of the
European
ringers,
ringers.
the Euro guys for the knockouts.
It's so stupid. Why Miles Robinson for the Olympic team? I haven't seen, maybe I'm just missing an article. I haven't seen a good analysis on that. Is the idea that like you want big center backs because for a youth tournament, it's probably the most undersized spot.
Yeah, I assume that's the thinking.
Wouldn't you want to bring like your best striker? Just like somebody like
I mean,
what's funny
honestly,
is
the no.
we don't have any in this. We don't have any in the player pool. Like Josh Sargent is mid.
The no-brainer striker of the Olympics is Brandon Vasquez,
right?
Because he's a massive body for a youth tournament.
That'd be funny as hell.
Well, and like,
or somebody really old, like somebody washed, like Josie Altidore, trying to get out there and running with the kids.
Say a good chunk of the starting men's national team is pretty close to U23. A lot of these guys are 24 years old. I don't know exactly when the cutoff is, but like Joe Scally and Balogun and stuff, they could start for the Olympic team.
I think it's a 2020. I think it's a 2001 birth year.
Okay, so that's the designation.
Because Schulte is Olympic eligible, Celentano is not.
Okay, yeah. But yeah, there's a handful of guys. Yeah, Ricardo Pepi, I think, he's 21 years old. He could be on the Olympic team without burning an overage spot. Very funny. Could we offer them Ian Murphy instead? Would you take that trade if we got to lose one? Murphy would be a good.
It's all during the
Olympic.
Leagues Cup. I don't care.
Yeah, have
That's
Ian
changed
Murphy.
my position on it.
Send them both.
Oh, okay.
Can we send him Nick Hagglund and not tell them he's injured? Like, he gets off the plane in a walking boot, and they're like, "Wait, what the fuck?"
Ooh, we send Nick Hagglund instead of Miles Robinson, and he has to convince everybody he's Miles Robinson.
Your passport doesn't match, sir. It's like, no, trust me. This is me. It's a bad photo. I photographed bad.
Assad got a goal in this game. That was exciting.
Cool. I still am seeing as much of a Yamil Assad as I need to see. And
I think Veroni enters elite shithead territory for FC Cincinnati fans. He's now a player I will circle when we play New England. As somebody
he elbowed Santos in the head, and Yedlin got a card for it.
His name also sounds like a type of lunch meat too, so I'm just not interested in knowing more about him.
I did like that sequence, and I don't want to harp on the ref. It was not good, but the sequence where Veroni elbows Santos in the head. The play is allowed to continue while Santos is rolling around on the ground. It took Yedlin yelling at the ref and getting a yellow card for yelling at the ref to stop play, who then sees Santos on the ground and recognizes that it's a head injury and then calls on the training staff. And you have to ask yourself, if you're the referee, how did he get this head injury? And if he is not faking it, the person who gave him the head injury needs a yellow card, or Santos needs a card for faking the head injury. I don't know how you can interpret that situation as Santos fell and hit his head on the ground. It's very weird. That sequence in particular was very frustrating.
The officiating was not good. It's not the reason why we lost, but
it was terrible.
But yeah, it was like a 19-8 foul disparity at one point. It was a clown show.
If you had the conspiracy theory that MLS didn't want Cincinnati to win so that Miami could remain top of the Supporters Shield for another week, this is about the officiating performance you would get, though.
Happy to do our part, I guess. Mm-hmm. Nonsense and tomfoolery.
Let's leave this match behind us, shall we? And let's talk about the more exciting topic in part 2. Part 3, we'll touch on Patreon questions and have intern Luke on to talk about his brief moment in the sun on Twitter. But in part 2, we're going to talk some rumors of Weston McKennie to FC Cincinnati. Is this the name? Is this the big name? Let's talk about it in part 2. Before we get to the next part of the episode, I do want to tell you about our sponsor, Cincy Shirts, which is now the home of official Cincy Postcast merch. This is so exciting, and we really never thought we'd see the day, and yet here we are, alive and actually seeing the day. Cincy Shirts has been with FC Cincinnati from the beginning. They've been with the Post for ever now, from the beginning, our very first sponsor. So happy to have them along for this journey. There are 6, count them, 6 different shirts available at this time of recording that you can purchase from their website for real life. This is, again, a real thing that you can do. As I'm sure you know, but I will remind you, they have 3 retail locations, including Fort Mitchell, Loveland, and Oakley Hyde Park, where in those locations they can print on demand. If they don't have the size of something you want, you can print on demand. I assume this means postcast shirts as well. Give it a shot. Let me know how that goes. If for some reason you do not want to purchase one of our shirts, I won't hold it against you. You can use promo code ThePostCincy. That's all one word, all caps, ThePostCincy, for 10% off your next order. This also works with Postcast shirts, so please don't pay full price. Make sure you knock 10% off for yourself on that one. Spread the code far and wide, I guess, and let them know about Cincy Shirts and let them know about the podcast while you're at it. Otherwise, the code doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But again, a huge thank you to Cincy Shirts for sponsoring this episode and so many before it. And if I do see you out there with a t-shirt, I will be embarrassed for you, but I will probably give you a high five and tell you well done. So again, thank you to Cincy Shirts. Thank you to you for buying shirts and using that promo code. All right, we are back, and we are here to talk about the good stuff. The reason why anybody follows soccer, let's be real, is for the transfer sagas, the transfer season. And there was some news that came out this week. Yes, there was some news. The reporting being that Weston McKennie is a target of one FC Cincinnati. Weston, if you're not familiar, which I don't know how this is possible, Weston McKennie, starting national team midfielder. He is a starter for a little team in Italy called Juventus. They've won the most titles of anybody over there. I feel confident in saying that. I don't think one of the Milans beat them.
If you look at Juventus's, if you go to Juventus on Transfer Market and you look up their stats from last season, Weston's, I think, like 5th in total minutes.
Wow.
Everybody in the top 10 is either at the Euros playing for a team like Italy or playing for Brazil in Copa America right now.
Yeah. So the way this came to light, just to level set for everyone, this was on June the 20th, which I think would have been Thursday, I want to say.
Yes.
So Thursday, June the 20th, a little later on in the afternoon, a tweet comes out. Source: Cincinnati makes bid for U.S. men's national team star Weston McKennie. I think it was probably tweeted out earlier in the day, but this is the one that I've got pulled up right now. It's from Christian Dyer, who is a writer for USA Today. And the article, just to summarize, a source tells Pro Soccer Wire that FC Cincinnati has made a bid for McKennie, with the MLS side willing to go as high as $15 million in an effort to secure the U.S. men's national team mainstay as a designated player. FCC is understood to be one of several MLS sides interested in McKennie, which is always code for somebody has discovery rights and someone else is trying to negotiate for those discovery rights, who is set to enter the final season of his contract with Juventus. Talks between McKennie and Juventus over an extension have reportedly hit a dead end, and they appear to now be open to selling the Texan this summer rather than losing him for free in 2025. McKennie was recently rumored to be nearing a move to Aston Villa as part of a swap deal, but that transfer now appears to be off due to McKennie's failure to reach an agreement with the Premier League side. And eventually, Juventus did agree to a player swap with Aston Villa that did not include McKennie. So Christian Dyer is the origin of this rumor. And then Grayson pointed out several times afterward that it was a little odd that this was the only source of that rumor. This person also having been wrong about the aforementioned Caleb Porter becoming the head coach of FC Cincinnati a number of years back, which was funny. But then things got a little spicier during the MLS telecast of the New England Revolution versus FC Cincinnati. You may have missed this if you were attending the match and didn't want to watch this nightmare back. But apparently during the match, Devin Kerr, who is the color analyst for the broadcast, partner of one Mike Watts on the USL national broadcast, stated that he had been told that Weston McKennie visited Cincinnati and Mercy Health Training Center recently as part of investigation of a move happening. So I don't know, where do you want to start on this? Do we want to start with?
Well, so let's start with, I think you've done a good job of yes, I guess, laying out what is known, or at least what is reported. On the visit, there was a little bit of, I think, confusion.
Yeah.
Because, the announcer said, in no uncertain terms, Weston McKennie visited Cincinnati to check it out, which means he did, right? Yeah,
it's an MLS broadcast with someone who's a league employee. This is not. Yeah. It's also a dude who it's like, this is the guy Mike Watts said was his favorite color person who does the most research.
Yes.
On this podcast. Dapped him up for saying he knows more about soccer than you do. This isn't a man that's just going to be spouting off at the hip that a player of Weston McKennie's profile visited Cincinnati, and he's certainly not going to be taken in by a joke tweet like I saw was talked about earlier.
Some people took that to mean, one, that Weston left U.S. men's national team camp the day before the Bolivia game to watch the FC Cincinnati match. Yeah. And some people also, which nobody ever said that happened. Nobody legitimately said that happened.
And then Devin did not give a timeline.
Right. He did not give a timeline. And then other people, for some reason, thought that a joke tweet that one of our more creative fans put out, that, of Weston visiting Mercy Health or whatever, that's what fooled the announcer, with no evidence that the announcer ever saw that tweet.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that the announcer is not doing that.
No.
He's not sourcing it back to a tweet.
No. I do want to point out very quickly that the announcers for these games, they meet with the coaching staff before. If people don't know, they always do a pre-game prep show so that they know what to talk about and they get a sense of the tactics. And it's actually kind of touchy because the assumption is that you give the commentators a lot to work with and that they are keepers of that information, but it gives you a better broadcast product. And so, it could come up with Noonan saying, oh, well, we got this guy coming in and stuff like that. So,
yeah. So, there had been a rumor bubbling up on the 13th or 14th that a U.S. men's national team player was visiting Cincinnati around that time. And that's where you saw a lot of people making the jump to Gio Reyna, for example. So I expect that visit was McKennie. And it was, because that timing also makes sense because their last friendly was Wednesday, the 12th. And then presumably they would have had a couple of days off before getting back into camp for for Copa America for real.
Yeah.
So this is not somebody who's like dipping out of camp secretly this time. This is clearly somebody who's like using a little bit of their free time to check out a potential destination. Yeah, right? Like how potential, we'll see, but
it was in fact Wednesday, June 12th was the last match with Brazil. And before people say, oh, McKennie already had been to Mercy Health, he knows what the facilities look like, he knows everything. I would assume that any part of that meeting also would be interacting with the coaching staff and the front office, who he would not have come into contact with, I would expect, to any great extent while playing and training in Cincinnati ahead of any matches.
Yeah, and potentially meeting up with friends. Like, he's played with Yedlin and Miazga and these guys and wants to know what the deal is,
Plays with Miles, straight up.
Right. So
for all we know, Miles walked him around.
Right. Could have come back with him. Hey, man, check out this place. This is pretty cool. So one thing, a lot of people are asking, like, is this real? I got a lot of text messages from folks like, is this real? Is this real? I have no doubt that FC Cincinnati bid $15 million to Juventus for Weston McKennie. Now, does that mean he is going to come here? Absolutely not. Do I even think it's likely he comes here? No, but I have no doubt that FC Cincinnati bid that much for Weston McKennie. It's not exactly clear who has his discovery rights, and it is possible that we have to submit a bid in order to get some money for whoever does have his discovery rights, or who he's negotiating with, and we have
we have them.
Yes.
Right? And we just need to make a bid to preserve them.
Yeah, so let's say he wants to go back to Dallas to play in Texas. That's where he's from. That's where he sort of came up in the academy. We have to make a good faith bid, or whatever the phrasing is, a fair market value bid for the player in order to actually get, say, 200,000, 300,000 GAM from Dallas for his discovery rights. That's good misses for FCC. The bid is real. Maybe the goal or the intention of signing him isn't 100% there. But the other thing is worth pointing out is that while the transfer fee numbers are huge in Europe, unless you are at the peak of the sport, the salaries aren't necessarily that high, or at least that far off of what MLS is offering for a lot of guys these days. For example, unless I've got a conversion rate or I'm misremembering, Lucho Acosta is making more than Weston McKennie is. Lucho Acosta at FCC is making more than Weston McKennie is making at Juventus. Weston is making somewhere in the neighborhood of 3.5 to 4 million euro a year.
I think that's usually I think that he is making more than Lucho. I think that's usually reported as net.
As a post-tax thing. And Italy did relax a lot of their tax laws, although they are turning their sports taxes back on for next year. So a lot of these guys may have to be paid more. So, okay, fair enough. Post-tax, it may look a little differently. But if he's a designated player in MLS, FCC could offer him that much or more. They could offer him $10 million a year salary. And he's not going to find that.
If you believe the reporting out of Italy and around McKennie's camp, they're at an impasse because Juventus won't offer him the money that he wants. He wants a raise from Juventus. I think he was looking for in the neighborhood of...
they want to cut his pay now.
Yeah. And he wants more. Like, I think he was looking in the neighborhood of the 5 to 6 million euro range. He's currently at like the 3 to 3.5 range. And they were like, no, we're not going to do that. He also... There's no easy way to say this. He was the victim of some pretty horrendous racist treatment during his time in Europe, especially during his time when he was on loan at Leeds. But even at Juventus, he's been... The European soccer culture is just rife with this kind of treatment of especially players of color. And it's been pretty rough for McKennie. This is all to say that there are some reasons why you wouldn't just immediately dismiss the idea of a player like McKennie wanting to come back to MLS and back to the United States.
There was an article like the day before
and the day
of this Christian Dyer report about like some of the mistreatment that McKennie has received and some of the conditions he's played in all sorts of ways.
Yeah, it wasn't even the racism. It was the club conditions at Juventus. Right. They were bullying him in the workplace. Like, it was rough.
So it's like the bunch of stuff going on there. And it's real interesting that this report comes out. Let's say the same day that the report comes out of the overtures from FC Cincinnati.
Yeah. Now, if this is all negotiations from McKennie's agent, which we have reason to believe would be pretty friendly with a lot of FCC-related individuals, then fair play. And I'm sure to some degree they all are. All transfer rumors are somebody playing something off of somebody there.
McKennie's with Wasserman. We have a bunch of players that are with Wasserman. I think Noonan is with Wasserman. Albright at least used to be with Wasserman, and by all accounts has a very friendly relationship, like, with them in general. So
yeah, and a lot of our guys have come from the represented by the same agency. So yeah, I've no doubt that this is some degree of negotiation tactics, but you don't put this out there. Let's say it is. You don't put this out there unless you are at least willing to entertain the idea of coming to the United States. And, not unlike my pitch to Ronaldo as to why he might come to Cincinnati, the pitch is true for any player overseas. Like, we are one of the better teams. We have some of the better coaching staff. We have great facilities. We have a city that will largely leave you alone. And if you are a 25-year-old, 26-year-old American midfielder with a long-term girlfriend looking to start a family, you could pick a lot worse cities than Cincinnati to come be a multimillionaire in sports hero of a town and play on a good team.
On that point, we would also be remiss if we didn't mention the Taylor Twellman tweet.
Oh, yeah.
Where he said,
Two tweets. Yeah.
He said something along the lines of like, well, he had like an eyeballs or emoji reaction tweet.
It was like a shocked embarrassment emoji of like, wow, can you believe this thing? Yeah.
And he also had a longer text he wrote out, which was basically like, look for a bunch of these guys to think about coming back ahead of the next World Cup. They're at that age where they're, starting families and having kids and, and maybe they're, missing home, and
to be fair,
we said this about Taylor Twellman before. Like, I'm not saying he's reporting anything happening. Right.
Right.
But I don't think Taylor Twellman is just wondering idly about what might be in some of these guys' heads.
No.
Yeah.
And it's a different sort of mentality, too. A lot of these guys, especially McKennie, they went over to Europe really young. So it's not like they grounded out here in the United States for a number of years and got their opportunity at Europe. Like, you've been there for a number of years now. And yeah, coming back to America means something different, I think, if you started in Europe versus if you eventually got there and worked your way there. It's different for guys like McKennie and Pulisic to a certain extent than it is for guys like Yedlin, where they came up through MLS and had to fight to get over there. Coming back feels a little different and takes on a little bit of a different tone to it. So I guess, like, where to go from here? I guess the first question is, do we think there's a realistic chance that this is happening? I have gone back and forth on this since the news first broke. And I've kind of settled on no, that I don't think there's a realistic chance this happens. He would have to be McKennie would have to be a designated player coming back. There's just no doubt on the salary numbers alone, he's a DP. Now, I guess you could get into some ideas of, okay, some sort of a loan with a purchase option to try and keep his status something reasonable for the remainder of the year. I don't know how that would work out. Grayson would have to explain that to me for me to understand that. But he's a midfielder. He's not a striker. He would be coming into the position group that is inarguably the deepest and most talented on this club. You would almost certainly have to move out one of your starting midfielders. The person that makes the most sense in terms of a like-for-like replacement is either Obi or Pavel. Obi is a DP who will not be a DP next year because you've already gotten through his transfer fee on the guaranteed portion of his contract. So getting rid of Obi now doesn't make any sense for a number of reasons. Too many to list, frankly. I don't know. It just seems like this isn't the type of player this team needs. It didn't need it before they had center back issues. They especially don't need it now that if you would be getting rid of a Bupenza and you're not adding another striker. And I don't know. This just doesn't.
Chief,
I don't get it.
I think you made a mistake a lot of people have been making. You said the midfield is deep. Who's our fourth best center back or fourth best midfielder?
Kubo.
Right. Who is arguably our best striker right now. And if it's not Kubo, it's Malik Pinto. And if it's not Malik Pinto, it's Dado Valenzuela. That's not a very deep group. That's not a very deep group at all. McKennie as a starter with Buka presumably on the bench, that's suddenly a good group.
Yeah, so the fit, I'm not concerned about the fit all that much, except in the sense of the roster construction, because realistically, you need to have an open DP spot for him. I believe the reporting that they are replacing Bupenza with a DP striker, which means they need to open another one. And, I don't believe that there is any interpretation of the rules that allows you to buy down Obi this year off of a DP contract. Maybe they get a special exemption for it, right? Or maybe they work out some weird thing with Juventus, where like he comes here on his current salary for the rest of the year, and it's like a fairly limited cap hit. And then we execute the purchase option in the winter, and then he becomes a DP next year. I mean,
which you'll have the spot for. You'll have the
spot for. Yeah. Which I guess those are all possibilities. I don't view them as all that likely. But I'm also with Chief. It just like, I don't think this one happens. I think that it being out the way it is likely serves some negotiation purpose for McKennie and his camp, and it shows that FC Cincinnati is being ambitious, right? It's a story that serves a lot of people's interests. But because you would have to have a lot of like kind of other things happen to make this fit under the roster rules. It doesn't feel super feasible unless we're doing like a big makeover just this summer, which maybe they are. I mean, they did a makeover to start the year. Yeah. So we're doing like a ship of Theseus kind of situation.
Is it the same FC Cincinnati as we started with?
We're going to slowly replace every player on the roster through the year. But I think it would be a great move for the team. Just like, I don't think there's a similar player they get for $15 million. Like Brenner was 10 and he got like no minutes in Serie A. Yeah. There's like a lot of players who get like very little minutes in Serie A that were bought for $15 million. So like he comes over, he's a top 2 player in Major League Soccer, him and Lucho.
Yeah. Did the transfer market analysis of this move. McKennie, if he did come to MLS, I won't even say FC Cincinnati. If he did come to MLS, he would be, according to Transfer Market, the highest valued player at the time of his move. Now, granted, they are not valuing Messi as the commercial asset, merely the player asset. They had him a little lower than this. McKennie would be the highest value there. He would also be the highest paid incoming transfer to MLS ever. Messi moved on a free.
You're just trying to make me mad.
I'm not trying to make you mad. I'm just saying in terms of history, this would be arguably the biggest transfer. I'm not going to count a free move. This would be the biggest transfer in MLS history. He would instantly become, a top 5 player in MLS.
There would be nothing that would give more ammunition to the people that say MLS is a deeply unserious league than if the top incoming transfer of all time was an American.
But wouldn't the top incoming transfer in England probably be an Englishman at some point? The top incoming...
It's not. The only reason it's the top incoming transfer might be an Englishman in England is that they are so awash with talent in the Premier League that keeping your domestic roster restrictions requires that you grossly overpay for the few talented English players there are.
They do have that.
Hold on. This is we've already done the chief thing where he's like, Americans should never be DPs.
Right. We didn't do it on here. We didn't do it on here.
We did it on the last episode.
We did.
They should never be DPs.
We did it when you were talking about Gio. Yes.
We were talking about Gio.
I'm saying it's so important. I'm going to say it again. You should not use a DP spot on an American. If you are thinking about using a DP spot on an American, there is a better player for a similar amount of money that you can get, and I guarantee that fact. I guarantee you that if Weston McKennie is worth $15 million, there is someone else out there worth $15 million and one additional dollar that is an exponentially better player than Weston McKennie.
There is not.
Let's say...
Hold on.
Yeah.
You just... After this podcast, because we need to talk about the U.S. men's national team weirdos and get out of here.
Yes.
After this podcast, go look at the European transfer window and see what kinds of players were sold for $15 million.
Okay.
It's not, they're not players who are getting, north of 2,000 minutes for Juve.
I don't understand when it became a hot take to say Americans are not great at soccer.
It's not a hot take. It's a stupid take.
Compared to the rest of their world.
We're not signing Americans. We're signing Weston McKennie.
We're not signing me. We're signing a starter from Juventus.
Player A that is worth $15 million here and player B that is worth $15 million and tell me nothing else about them, that this one's Brazilian and this one's American, I'm picking the Brazilian 100 times out of 100. And I think everyone would be with me on this.
This is how Toronto builds their rosters.
A Brazilian that's worth $15 million is like Brenner a little bit better.
Yeah.
That's far behind McKennie.
Yeah.
So
you're not going to convince me on this one. I'm sorry.
I don't care about convincing you. It's stupid and you can just sit there in your stupidness and be stupid. The Twitter stuff has been a little funny.
Grayson, you haven't been as involved. I'm curious what your take is.
Well, the take is that you have a bunch of these men's national team ride or die weirdos, or men's national team dead enders. I don't know what you would call them, but who are just freaking out at even the possibility that McKennie, for... what if he came back to the U.S., it would be for his own reasons that are really nobody's business, but his. They'd be extremely mad at McKennie for doing it, and they're saying that FC Cincinnati is like trying to ruin American soccer by signing good players to its domestic soccer league, which is ridiculous.
I love the logic of, and I saw somebody else like actually walking somebody through this like Socratic model style, which was amazing to see. But like MLS is a bad standard of play, so we don't want American soccer players to play there. Okay, so what should MLS do to increase the standard of play? Sign better players. Okay, great. Who are good players that we can sign that are willing to come here? Oh, guys like Weston McKennie. You could spend a lot of money for him, but he's a good player. He would raise the standard of play in MLS. We don't want our American players playing there because it's a poor. Like at some point, somebody has to bite the bullet and start bringing the first good player in MLS.
And you know, I guess my overall take on like that entire topic.
Yeah.
Of like whether the best U.S. players should be playing in Europe or the U.S. is I don't care. The U.S. needs more good players.
Yes.
And because the national team's hopes are not having 23 guys on 23 different European teams. That does not make you a great world international soccer power.
No.
What makes you a great soccer power is having 100 guys all at a really high level, all over different places. Belgium was fielding Axel Witsel when he was playing in like Russia and China and all that crap, right? And Belgian people weren't sitting around like furrowing their brows that their team keeps calling in a really good player who happens to be playing in the Chinese league because that, you know, made that to him seemed like the best place for him to be for likely money reasons, but
monetary reasons. Yes.
But you know, Belgium has been fielding players playing in the Middle East.
Yeah.
In this Euros. And
I'll keep coming back to 2014 World Cup. Brazil are host nation, and their starting goalkeeper is Julio Cesar, who was the starting goalkeeper for Toronto FC. Like,
these
if
people,
Brazil can manage
other
it.
countries,
so the point is care. Like,
yes,
right. So the point is like, Weston McKennie would not stop being Weston McKennie if he came to MLS.
That would be wild.
Right. And
he becomes Nick Hagglund.
What is holding America back as a soccer country is not, it's the same thing. Honestly, it's the same thing holding MLS back as a league is they're just not developing a critical mass of players at a minimal level.
Yeah.
To give you that domestic base that, you know, ultimately some of your top players are going to hit with, right? But like all of the top leagues, their base of players is domestic players.
Yes.
And like Weston McKennie doesn't make Serie A a good league. Serie A is a good league because their baseline of player is very strong.
Their Nick Hagglunds
and their
are
baseline
very
player,
good.
Their baseline player is like an Italian guy.
Right.
So you know what, it's just, you're not going to solve U.S. soccer's issues by keeping McKennie at Juve or sending him to the Premier League or doing anything else. It's just going to make you feel a little bit better about American soccer, but American soccer is going to be the exact same no matter where McKennie plays. And if you care about American soccer, get into youth coaching. I mean, not these guys because they're weirdos and probably shouldn't be around children, but like, but other people who care, who aren't, you know, yelling at Kevin on Twitter right now, should, you know, get their youth coaching badges and, you know, getting involved in clubs and making sure that like there's access to a huge player base of they're all getting really, really good coaching at young ages, and people have a pathway to rise up no matter their background or no matter what part of their country they're from. They can get into, you know, professional or professional adjacent academies. And, you know, ultimately we have a whole bunch of really good players that are playing in MLS. And then we have a larger group than we have now of top players who are playing in MLS, but also in those other leagues that people like.
Yeah. The domestic league is a better marker of the success of a footballing nation than the national team. There's only two nations that really kind of sort of defy that, and it's Argentina and Brazil, but still they have two top 10 leagues amongst them. But a strong, healthy MLS and an underpowered or underachieving national team will make us a better footballing nation than a super strong national team and a super weak domestic league.
One would solve the other eventually.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
A strong domestic league will solve the national team.
I'd say it's the one thing that this country hasn't tried. It's that we've tried in this country for my entire adult lifetime to drive interest in soccer via the national team. And what it's produced is a national team that still hasn't made it out of the quarterfinals. Like, it's a national team that is fundamentally just spinning its wheels in place. It's like, I hate to agree with Alexi Lawless ever, but like tonight in the pre-broadcast for the Bolivia game, what are the expectations to the national team? I don't know. Do something different that hasn't been done before. Like, we keep patting ourselves on the back with the national team for doing the same thing over and over again, but doing it with slightly more style. Like, we've tried for decades to drive interest and drive growth in this country on the back of the national team. I don't know. That ain't working. Maybe it's time to start focusing a little more on developing the local level, developing the league, and making MLS a better league that attracts better talent, that offers kids in this country a better pathway where they can see themselves as successful athletes and with a successful career plan without having to go to some country where they don't speak the language and live in a foreign culture. I'm not big on this McKennie move. I could talk at length of that. I won't, because we're going late on this. What I will say is I like the fact that FC Cincinnati is putting its marker out there and attempting to make big moves. Now, part of my problem with the McKennie move is that I find signing big-time Americans, regardless of whether or not you believe the talent level is there, I think that historically, virtually every U.S. men's national team player in history has been overrated. I think that the numbers bear that out. I think that the eyeball test bears that out. But there's something to be said for FC Cincinnati making big moves and trying to make big moves. I think bringing an American in is a low ambition move. I think that it doesn't plant the flag for the team the way I would like it to, because no matter how big an American player coming back to MLS is, it will always be spun as, oh, you're just getting a guy that wants to come home with his tail between his legs versus making a real statement. But even still, $15 million out there trying to set the transfer record for FC Cincinnati. I like the fact this club is out there doing it. I respect the ambition, and what I think that they're trying to do, and what I hope they're trying to do, is build this team into an international brand. Branch out, make big moves, make it so that when you think of MLS, that the team that comes to mind is, right now it's Miami, but there's no reason why that can't be Cincinnati too. There's no reason why Cincinnati can't put its name down on the soccer map. I mean, fuck, Manchester is like the Detroit or the Pittsburgh of England. And nobody stops and says, oh, well, who the hell is going to want to go live there and play soccer there? You'll never attract top talent to Manchester. No one goes to Manchester for the fucking weather, okay? No one goes there for the high quality of life. They go there because it is a footballing brand and it's a soccer identity that's there. There's no reason you can't do the same thing in Cincinnati. Absolutely none. And it starts with making big moves and having your name routinely linked to big players and big names around the country or in the world.
And it's all about money. Look, we can all pretend like it's about the prestigiousness of the competition or the teams that they're playing for, et cetera, et cetera. It's not. It's the money. Whoever's paying the most money is where the players would go. Saudi Arabia has proved that. China has proved that. If MLS would take the handcuffs off and really start fighting, I think you'd see a lot of teams suddenly poaching some really incredible talent around the world. That's just what is going to happen eventually as MLS opens up more and more. More and more of these moves are going to be inevitable. And yeah, don't sit here and try to tell me that Weston McKennie grew up as a small child wanting to play in the Europa Conference League quarterfinals or whatever. He'll go whoever's paying him $5 million a year to play soccer. And hopefully that's us. I think it'd be a fun move. I think he'd be awesome on this team. I think we can get him in. Loan now, buy in the winter. We can still save the DP spot for the striker. It'll be fun. Recall Alvaro Barreal. Let's get the gang back together. Brenner, bring him back. We're going to have fun, okay? It's going to be a blast. This team's going to be good. We just got to get through the Leagues Cup, and then we'll see what sort of roster we have to deal with going forward. That's going to do it for part 2. Part 3, we have old baby intern Luke on to talk about his tweet that made some waves, and we answer some Patreon questions as well in there. So join us over in part 3, shall you? Oh, and joining us over here in part 3, you're joined by the viral sensation intern Luke. Luke, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. I'm just hanging out.
Luke, I am so happy to have you on. Look, you came on the podcast for a brief moment. Then you had a hit tweet, hit the internet there. And
I mean, this is what a postcast internship is all about right here.
This is how we do it.
You got on the show for a minute. Many people were talking that it was a welcome addition. They learned some things about the city of San Jose that they otherwise wouldn't know. And you're trying to think to yourself, what else do we have to teach a bright young mind who may want to follow into the footsteps of being a content creator like we have found ourselves? The art of going viral with a hot take. Bravo. I read this. I read your content this week online, and I felt like a proud parent reading this. That here was someone who went into a topic feet first. And there's so much about this that I loved specifically, and that you've internalized some of the best rules of the postcast and of the post-Cincy. Number 1, spout off your take. Put your take out there.
Yes.
You miss 100% of the takes that you don't put online. Number 2, do not under any circumstances back down when confronted with opposing information, contradictory information,
even accurate information, right, that disproves you.
Do not back down. And number 4, when you find yourself in a corner, double down and keep going. It's like Kevin Durant said, it's on 10. You have to be on 10 from the moment you open the X app, the Bird app, to the moment you close the X app. Bravo.
It was so good. Luke,
I can't wait to see where we go next with this internship. It's just making me happy.
It can only get worse. Luke, for folks that are not on Twitter, what was the gist of your prompt there that got people so heated?
I watched Lucio Acosta in person score a last-second goal for the win, and with my girlfriend, and I was like, that's the most incredible thing I've ever seen. He is easily the greatest athlete to ever touch the city of Cincinnati.
Yes, that was the correct response.
What made a lot of people butthurt was, one, that I was wrong. He's not, but also that I mentioned Joe Burrow.
That's touchy.
And I said he is better in the MLS. I said Acosta's better in the MLS than Joe Burrow will ever be in the NFL.
Wow. I don't even know if that's necessarily untrue, but I could see where a Bengals fan would not want to hear it.
Oh, no, that part's true. The second part was just like, I'm mad. No, like, I'm just so excited. Like, I have to.
My man.
It was. So I'm gonna read it for everyone, for the people here.
Please.
Acosta is better in the MLS. And first off, job well done with the MLS.
I always say MLS. I never do the MLS, but apparently
your brain was in the I could tell your brain was primed for a great take when we're including the MLS right there. Acosta is better in the MLS than Joe Burrow will ever be in the NFL. Acosta is this city's best ever professional athlete. Because there's so many layers to this. You start out with a statement that's like, oh, that's bold, that's inflammatory. Maybe we can debate this. To the second part where it's, wait a minute, this is going wildly out of pocket right now. Before we get into this, I want to know. So as you're crafting this take, who are the athletes that you think that you went in your mind and you checked off, like Acosta's better than him, Acosta's better than him, maybe Acosta's better than her. I don't know. What were the athletes where you were like, nope, I'm comfortable saying he's the best one ever?
I have never been. Well, I don't think, or I haven't been into sports when I've seen a Cincinnati player score and win an MVP. I didn't think at all. Okay. I just tweeted it.
So Joey Votto did do it in 2010, which should be within your lifetime.
It definitely is.
Do you think baseball is a sport, though, is the real question?
I think it's a sport that should no longer exist.
Wow, my man.
Barry
Barry
Larkin also won MVP in 1995, decidedly outside of your time range, but just noting it for the people for the record.
If you told me Barry Larkin played for Minnesota, the Minnesota Twins, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense.
Oh, no, he's from Cincinnati. You have to know Larkin.
There's no Cincinnati sports history class.
Wow. Well,
that is true. Maybe there should be.
Might have just enrolled in it. I think we just found your internship. My gosh.
Okay, so there was no Bengal other than Joe Burrow that you could think of that would be like, shit, like I need to at least consider them in the conversation for greatest ever professional athlete?
Anthony Munoz. Because he's watched me play football. I know that guy. He's been to my football games at St. Margaret of York.
Okay.
What was your position in football? I need to know now.
Can you guess? Honest.
I was going to say, like, you got tight end energy a little bit about you, but I was going to also throw out there maybe linebacker.
I'll take that as a compliment. I played anything on the offensive line because I was always the number 2 guy.
Nice. The guy that was my best man at my wedding backed up Zach Streif, who ended up like becoming a Pro Bowl left tackle for all 4 years he was in high school. Never had to play because the guy he was behind was an actual legitimate NFL star.
Luke, I think it's fair to say that you were the Yuya Kubo of your offensive line. And
absolutely. It was
there
like,
you go.
I knew the plays of every single position, and they were not scared to put me in any single position, but I was hurt for like 2 years with the torn ACL, so I never really got to.
Nice. Number one thing in life is to always have an injury you can fall back on to explain why you never made it as a pro athlete. That's another opportunity to give a hot take about sports is when somebody says, well, did you play the game? It's like, well, I would have, but I tore my ACL. Thanks for bringing it up.
Well, it's not an excuse. I would have gone pro.
There we go.
So, lot of backlash here.
Yeah.
My favorite part of this interaction that I highlighted just because I'm a sicko, and I wanted to point out this was not. It was accused that I was roasting the intern. No, I was just highlighting what an incredible sense of comedic timing you have in these exchanges. So I'm going to read this one out. So reply to you, Oscar Robertson would like a word, but love the hot take. See, you're making fans out there. Your response, Robertson would be, but he didn't play professionally for us. As a Bearcat, though, dude is the GOAT. Undeniably true. Somebody else slides into your mentions. Ever heard of the Cincinnati Royals? And your response, which was just perfect here, was no. Which again, when you are in the middle of a take and defending a take, do not accept new information. Don't go seek out new information. Just, have you heard of this? Nope. And I'm not going to educate myself about this either, because fuck you, I'm right.
That is great. It did get me thinking, though, Luke. You mentioned not knowing we just mentioned not knowing the Royals, but you mentioned there isn't a Cincinnati sports class that you can take. Well, Luke, this is where I do want to take you to this class. I have in front of me a list of a number of former and defunct professional teams from Cincinnati. I'm going to give you a couple of these. I'm also going to sprinkle in some fake ones as well. Luke, it is your job. You have to tell me which ones are real and which ones are fake. I will give you the team name and I will give you the sport they allegedly played. Okay? Are you prepared for this?
I see some teams flash in my head that I've seen walk around Cincinnati. So I think I got something here. We'll try it out.
Okay. I think we should also, let's level set this conversation. Luke, give the people your birthday.
Yeah, let's do this.
What do you mean my birthday?
Like the day you were born.
Year?
Or the birth year if you don't feel comfortable giving out your social security number too.
2003.
Okay, there we go.
2003. Okay. Are you from Cincinnati originally?
Born and raised.
Okay,
right.
so no excuse is what I just heard. Got it. Okay, this team is the Cincinnati Stingers. They allegedly played ice hockey. Is this team real? Is this team fake?
Real. I went
that.
to an FC Cincinnati game. Me and my mom walked into this barbecue bar, and there's a Cincinnati Stingers. And I went, what the hell is that team? And I looked it up, and I'm like, oh, it's an old ice hockey team. That's funny.
Fun fact about the Cincinnati Stingers. Longtime ESPN hockey analyst Barry Melrose played for the Cincinnati Stingers. They were in the World Hockey Association 1975-1979. The World Hockey Association merged with the NHL, and Cincinnati, as legend goes, was the last man out of the merger and has been talked about from time to time, off and on, as a potential NHL expansion or relocation city. Never pulled it off.
You know, the owner of the Cincinnati Stingers was a man by the name of Bill DeWitt, who then would later take the money that they got. His family would take the money they got selling the Stingers because, yeah, there was a merger with the NHL, but the reason for the merger historically was that the NHL wanted access to a couple of the Canadian teams that the World Hockey Association had, and everybody else they just paid to go away. And the DeWitts took that money and bought the St. Louis Cardinals. And so that is why. And also the owners of Dewey's Pizza, I believe, as well.
That sounds right.
The DeWitt family. Also a former employer of the Chiefs' old man, was the public address announcer for the Cincinnati Stingers back in the day.
There we go. Okay.
So, there you go. Chief Senior, as it will.
If you walk around Riverfront or whatever the arena is these days, down between Great American Ballpark and the arena, there is still some Stingers signage painted on the concrete down there. All right, I got another one for you. This team played football, allegedly, the Cincinnati Triangles.
There's no way the Cincinnati Triangles are a real team.
You think they're real?
No. And if they are, that is a complete failure of a marketing team.
Well, you're half right. They were not a Cincinnati team. It was the Dayton Triangles in the 1930s. That was a real-life American football team. I don't know if they were ever in the NFL. I don't have that up in front of me. But, man, you were 100% right. That is the worst team name I've ever heard of. I don't know what the triangle was in reference to. I don't know.
I bet they saved a lot of money designing the logo.
They named it after the logo that it could get. They just let's roll with this.
It's like the NASL San Francisco Deltas, the Delta symbol. It's good stuff.
Triangle erasure there.
All right, another team for you. Playing soccer again, allegedly, the Cincinnati Kids. the Cincinnati Kids. Did they
Fake. Fake.
Ooh.
Chief, tell them.
The Cincinnati Kids were a former indoor soccer league that played in the National Indoor Soccer Association, the NISA, I think it was.
Major Indoor Soccer League.
But they were owned by Cincinnati's own Peter Edward Rose, who I think we still have to claim him.
We do.
Okay.
Several people were claiming him as the Cincinnati GOAT in my mentions, which is crazy.
So Pete Rose has a pretty illustrious playing career and one of the greatest.
If we focus only on his playing career,
please do.
Please do. He's very much like, less stabby, but kind of like Cincinnati's O.J. Simpson, where as long as you can find, it's like, oh, he was just unbelievable on a baseball field.
Right. The big old asterisk on it every single time.
You say he's like, there's a lot of guys, they say, as good a player as he was a better human. With Pete, they just say, as good a baseball player as he is, he's a good baseball player.
All right, I've got another one here for you, Luke. Playing the sport of American football, the Cincinnati Reds.
I'm going to say that is real because I feel like I've seen baseball, or teams pick up just like, oh, yeah, our baseball team's in this, we'll just do that. I feel like it probably was real at one point as a semi-professional league.
They were in the NFL in 1933 and for half of the 1934 season before they went bankrupt. That was a very real team. I got another one for you. Again, playing. Actually, let's switch it up here. Let's go with. Let me scroll a little further up. Playing baseball. The Cincinnati All-Americans.
I'm going to jump in. That's got to be fake. I don't know the answer to this.
It's 100% fake. I'm pretty sure that was another defunct Dayton NFL team. Might have been a Columbus team. So I have a weird list of defunct Ohio sports teams up in here. I'm going to give you another one. Have you heard of them? Let's play this game. Have you heard of the Cincinnati Saints?
No, I've never heard of them.
That's a great FC Cincinnati fan.
First off, how dare you, says every Detroit City FC fan of all time. The Cincinnati Saints were a NPSL, National Professional Soccer League, National Premier Soccer League. That was a semi-pro. I don't think they paid their players, but they were a semi-professional soccer team that played here in Cincinnati prior to and for at least, I think, 1 year after the arrival of FC Cincinnati. And their stadium location on the grounds that TQL Stadium currently sits on at Old Stargell Field.
Yes.
Wow.
The dream of the Cincinnati Saints owner, I think his name was David Satterwhite, was to eventually build a soccer stadium and expand Stargell Stadium because he thought soccer had a future in the West End and over the Rhine.
He nailed it.
Yeah, he nailed it.
Didn't have a billionaire standing behind him to talk about it. Got another one for you. Have you ever heard of the Cincinnati Swords?
No.
You should know that one. There's another minor league hockey team you should be aware of. And the Northern Kentucky River Monsters. Have you ever heard of them?
Little Miami? Oh, no, this is the River Rats. Oh, sorry.
Wow.
No, I haven't heard of them.
It was a Arena Football League 2 team, I believe. Jared Lorenzen, the hefty lefty, was their quarterback. Oh, Google the photo. Him playing, he had ballooned up to about 400 pounds. Like he looked like a sumo wrestler playing quarterback. The photos are hilarious.
Wait, that was in Cincinnati?
Yeah, they played in Northern Kentucky. They played at the Bank of Kentucky Center, I believe, right? The NKU's arena.
They did.
Wow.
Established in 2010, folded in 2014. Jared Lorenzen was the 2011 UIFL MVP. How about that?
There you go. Rest in peace to the hefty lefty, man. Just a one-of-one type athlete right there.
I think it's absurd he played in the NFL at all. I know he played for the Giants shortly.
Man has a Super Bowl ring. Put some spec on his name. He was the backup to Eli Manning.
So good. So
there's something just genuinely pure about like going back through the history of defunct minor league sports teams. I've got an uncle who I keep trying to tell him he should write a book where he has bounced around the country from place to place working for minor league sports outfits. Like he worked for the Cyclones for a bunch of years. He worked in marketing for a AAA club in Fresno, California. He was the marketing guy for a team called the Dayton Ice Bandits. That's a defunct hockey team in Dayton.
Nice.
He worked for the Cincinnati Stuff. That was
that was one on the list here.
A semi-pro basketball league that played at the Riverfront Coliseum back in the early 2000s. He just like any place you can think of, this guy has worked at, and just he would go to workplaces and the teams would fold within like a year or two, and he'd be out looking for a job. Just the greatest career of like his merch closet, like of shit that he stole from like the teams as they went out of business, is insane. The stuff that he's got. So there you go. That's intern Luke learning the history of Cincinnati sports teams. Any of these seem like teams you would have wanted to be fans of if they would have existed during your lifetime?
No.
I'll tell you one that you would have liked if you were at the right school age, the Cincinnati Silverbacks. Anybody who remembers Silverbacks games had a blast. It was at the arena downtown, and it was just fast-paced indoor soccer. The logo and everything was awesome. It was super accessible to kids. They always brought out like the players for autographs after games and stuff. It was a wild league as well. It was super fun games. Those were a lot of fun.
They should so like there's a bunch of MLS teams that have a ton of history where like the Sounders, the Timbers, the Whitecaps, all those teams trace their roots back to the old NASL. There's other teams that are, like Kansas City, they were the Wiz, not the Wizards, the Wiz at one point. They should have a night where teams wear throwbacks to like what their original jerseys were. And they should if your city doesn't have, like, if you have a newer MLS team, but there's some older team that you can, I guess, get the IP for, it would be rad if Cincinnati wore the Silverbacks jerseys for one game a year.
100%. So I was looking at this. And
they could make it like Harambe night. Like he was a Silverback. He was our sweet prince, our hero of our city.
The FC Cincinnati third kit that is gorilla themed would
I have
be
a fun
insane.
fact. Something I learned 15 minutes before this podcast. My girlfriend is a vet. I think her teacher said she got married at the Cincinnati Zoo. Okay. She got married the day Harambe was killed. I think this is the curse.
At the zoo?
Yes, they got married at the zoo the day Harambe was killed.
They let him go forward? Wow.
and I'm like, this wedding.
Can you imagine the Bridezilla moment? The Bridezilla moment if your wedding had to be canceled because a gorilla got shot at the zoo.
Wow, that's good. I like that.
I like how Grayson joined midway through this segment, has just been laying out the entire time.
I was going to introduce him at some point. I was waiting for the right time. But Chief, to your point, FC Cincinnati, Jeff Bird and Carl Linder. You need to buy the rights to the Riverhawks, the Silverbacks, the Excite. You already can work out the Cincinnati Kings. Kings Hammer is basically a part of the ownership group at this point. And the Saints. That's where you're gonna stumble, and I totally understand. But if you can do that, you can trace FC Cincinnati's legal history. If you just merge them together and call it a united club, you could trace FC Cincinnati's history back to 1997 and claim all of these brands in throwback nights.
Or you can just cut a deal with Cincy Shirts, because I guarantee you they own the IP for the majority of the teams you just listed.
I know they definitely have Silverbacks.
And when you cut a deal with Cincy Shirts in order to acquire these IP, use promo code ThePostCincy and see if you can save 10% off acquiring all these intellectual properties or the rights to use them in your future kit development. I think that promo code works if you're buying or you're licensing deals. I think that it'll work even at that scale, right?
You put it in the margins of the contract, and it
like have your legal team at the bottom, like where everybody signs that. Just put promo code ThePostCincy for 10% off on the deal. They have to honor it. If they don't, you legally have a cause of action, I believe.
Let us know. Man, some good teams here. Cincinnati Blades, the Rockers. Okay. Grayson, this is where I do want to bring you in, because I am going to go to the Patreon for the last little bit of the podcast here. We got a couple of questions to ask. And again, if you want to support us financially, you're more than welcome to. It's on Patreon. There's a link in the description of this podcast or this episode or wherever, or you can just Google it. It'll probably come up. I don't know what'll happen. So with that, we have questions that people have asked, and I'm going to ask them to the pod here. I like this one from KP. If you could quantum leap a soccer point in time to a soccer point, there might have been a missing word here. I'm going to read it. We're going to figure this out together. If you could quantum leap a soccer point in time for FCC, would you, or what point in time would you? I guess I don't know what quantum leap means in this context. Can anybody help me out?
I can go ahead and answer that question. Okay. Quantum Leap was a science fiction show from the 1980s, I want to say, where it involved Scott Bakula, uniformly the worst Starfleet captain of all time, but we're not going to go there at this point, where Scott Bakula would hop into the bodies of people throughout history and would experience a day or a week as those people, as they did various aspects of their life. So the question here, I believe, would be, if you could hop back and make yourself part of one moment in FCC's history, which moment would you hop into? But I guess the premise of the question is a little odd, because if you hop into Mitch Hildebrandt's body and then you fuck up the save in the shootout, do we not end up in MLS then at that point? That's a lot of pressure, I think, right there.
Well, so the answer for me is, and I think this would actually be the best Quantum Leap episode, would be I hop into Matt Miazga's body the day of Game 2 against New York Red Bulls.
Of course.
And so, obviously I know that I'm supposed to prevent him from, doing any number of things, to be honest. But the other thing that I have to do is I would have to have a moment in the morning where my hologram friend Al downloads all the database of soccer tactics and stuff, and teaches me how to play center back so that I can go out and actually play the game, and not I guess us losing that game wouldn't have been the necessarily worst outcome either.
So hold on. That was the New York Red Bulls playoff game, FC Cincinnati. That was the second game, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to find the roster on this one. It was 1-1, right? It was the final score.
You know what I might do?
No, you don't, because what you want to do is
pull myself out of the game early.
No.
Or tweak something in pregame.
No, you're looking at this all wrong. You don't need to. I'm looking at the bench for this game right here. You don't need to be Matt Miazga. You just need to be someone on the team that didn't play.
You need to be Malik Pinto or something.
Or Alec Khan or something like that.
Yes.
Or Alec Can. You hop into his body, and then that at the end of the game, you've got to somehow get between Miazga and the officials' dressing room. And when he shows up, you've got to be like, whoa. Let's think about this. Or, hey, I got this case right here. Let's go. It's not going to drink itself. Let's get on the bus real quick.
So what if I quantum leaped into Bad Dog Sports? Or whatever that guy was called?
Yes.
And then you have a bunch of options there. You either
intervene or observe.
Trip Miazga, walking at some point, or fabricate your testimony.
No, even better. You quantum leap into the ref that gave him the yellow card. And not only do you not give the yellow card, but even if you give him the yellow card, at the end of the match, when Miazga's coming to get you charge out of the dressing room and get him in the hallway and start attacking him. So that way it looks like you're biased against Miazga, and they have to throw out all of your decisions from that point forward. And not only does he not get suspended, he probably gets that yellow rescinded and can play the next game anyway.
Boom. I was just going to say, be the ref and just be super accommodating and help get it overturned. But I like your version of attacking me, Oscar. This probably goes against the premise of the show, but I'm a big believer in like our timeline is the result of whatever time travel happened. I don't know what like version of time travel, what name that has, but I like to think that like you did go back in time to intervene as Matt Miazga, but whatever we got now is less bad than whatever Miazga had done originally. So maybe he did actually assault the referee, but you quantum leaped and got it down to an argument.
No, I guess maybe you switched the food he was bringing because the food he was bringing had a knife. Well, and so in the other timeline, he has a knife with his meal and somebody ends up getting stabbed and he's banned forever. And you were successful only in getting him something that he could eat with his hands, like a piece of pizza, as opposed to something that required a knife and fork.
Here's what happened. One of the refs died in a car accident leaving the stadium originally. So I had to go into the locker room to delay their departure just enough so that they would all survive the night.
Matt Miazga's the true hero of this story.
You see how... Yeah.
I have my theory on this. Grayson quantum leaped into the FC Cincinnati communications member that pulled Matt Miazga away and stopped it from being violent.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
That works too.
That works too. Not saving the ref's life by delaying him.
Let him die.
So this is clearly the answer. Whatever person or spectator around this incident, KP, this is the moment we pick. Your individual may vary.
I'm quantum leaping back into GB, and I have a taste for human flesh.
You're taking some of Niall McCabe with you.
Yeah, I'm going right to the neck this time.
There's nothing being left up to question. Tim Sears asks a question that I feel pretty confident I could answer without anybody here, but he asks, who at the post has the most soccer skills? And he adds in parentheses, Luke, I am not adding this. He adds this, including Luke.
In my past, I played until the second grade.
That's pretty high.
Yeah. Okay, but hear me out. Not only did I play until the second grade, I had the nickname Golden Toe. All right. Because I was way bigger than everyone else. I played defender. The ball came near me. It was at the goalkeeper. And right back to the other team's goalkeeper. I punted that thing whenever it came near me. No team had any possession in our box. That's what I'm saying. I think I can just punt the ball away from three.
That's pretty good.
I think we can definitively rule me out.
I was going to say, I don't think it's Chief. I don't think it's me. I don't think it's Luke. I'm pretty sure it's Grayson here. Grayson, you don't have to reveal any details, but I feel confident in saying you played at a higher level than any of us.
Only if Jonah's not here.
Okay, good.
Jonah is the best in the post sphere.
Yes, completely.
Get him in TST.
Then it's me after that.
What is the entry fee to TST? Like theoretically, how much would we have to raise to get a post team in TST?
The Natty SC raised between $10,000 and $15,000 to be one of the first 4 teams in. The fee only went up as each additional team was added.
So like when's the registration open? Like when do you get the lowest price possible? And can we raise enough money to get a team in before that?
I think conservatively we would need $30,000. I don't think we can do that.
But can you imagine the comedy value of a podcast losing? It's like 65 to nothing.
Yes, I can, and it's very funny.
I don't want to play. I want to be the manager on the sideline with the clipboard that I just throw down every single time we get scored on.
For anybody who played on or near the Pride 2 Gotham soccer team, you saw some 65 to nothing score lines. I can tell you, we were right there. So that was good. So yeah, the answer is Grayson. Unless Jonah's here, then the answer is Jonah. Let me quickly. I like this one. This is similar to the question that was asked on Twitter, again, by Jonah, of adding a center back to striker. This question comes from Brock Bermel. He asks, if you could pick any player to add to this FCC squad, past or present, who would it be?
Literally anyone that can play center back right now.
Take your pick of center backs. Ooh, what if that meant Tom Pedersen? Would you take Tom Pedersen right now?
Yes.
Yeah, I guess.
I would roll the
Blackett,
dice on London
Tyler Blackett
Agato.
available.
I think by the way, I think it's a gay do.
A gay do. I would roll the dice on London a gay do before Tom Pedersen would get a run out in my lineup.
I guess the real question is, at this point, if you're running the FC and you have a choice between a competent center back and, we'll say, current Ronaldo, who are you picking?
Current Ronaldo.
Yeah, I was gonna say, wait, who's making the decision? Birding or Noonan? Noonan might take the center back. Birding's taking Ronaldo.
it's like you have a chance to. How about a good center back? Like, we're talking like MLS best 11 center back or current Ronaldo.
You're still taking Ronaldo. You just need to win a couple of playoff games. You can win some free kicks. Actually, Luke, I think you are uniquely qualified to answer this question because I'm going to post this tomorrow. You wrote a story for us. This will be our tease for the story of former FC Cincinnati players not playing in MLS but are currently playing. Who out there do you think would be the best ad for this team? There is one correct answer. I want to see if you can get it.
Harrison Delbridge.
That's the answer. Currently playing in South Korea, center back extraordinaire.
Bring him home.
I had Harrison Delbridge on my phone before you even started asking me that question.
Nice. He's the only one playing somewhere. Was Patty Barrett still playing, or did he retire? Was he on?
I believe
I
he's
think
still
he
playing.
retired. Oh,
I thought he was. Let me check. I have my FOT mob following. Patrick Barrett, right?
That's him.
Yeah, he's playing in Shelbourne in Ireland.
Look at him go.
I mean, that could be a pub team for all we know.
It probably is a pub team.
I know they have like a 55 rating on FIFA or something close to that. Ireland stinks.
I am shocked they're on FIFA. About half of the League of Ireland is amateurs, so that's pretty good. All right, we got one last question here. Oh, this is great. This is going to follow a conversation we will have already had here from Joe Knight. If we sign a big name that has a following, what's the best way to handle the quote unquote big name effect? So the hypothetical addition of a Ronaldo or a Neymar, let's say, something crazy. How should FC Cincinnati fans embrace the inevitable million followers on social media that would come with that?
With open arms. Like, don't gatekeep. Like,
Yes.
the goal of bringing a player like that in is, like we talked about earlier, establishing Cincinnati as the team you think about in America. Like, it's shocking how wide open that opportunity is. And so, yeah, you get everybody hyped. We're glad you're here. Would you like to buy my ticket to this upcoming match at a significant premium so that I can pay for my tickets next year? Please buy something at the team shop. Yeah.
well, I mean, that's the thing, right? If the player plays for our team, you can sell your tickets guilt-free.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're not selling them to like a Messi fan coming as a visiting fan.
Yeah.
You're selling them to like a Ronaldo fan who's going to cheer for the FC.
Yes.
Win-win right here.
That is the way to do it. Yeah, I do like the idea, though, of FCC Twitter just getting in a giant flame war with Ronaldo Twitter. That could be amusing to watch.
That's gonna go great. Yeah, we're definitely not gonna do that. No, it's I said a lot of my piece in the last segment, and I'll just double down on that. That, build the brand.
Yeah. Yeah, I like it. All right. Well, that's all I got for Patreon questions right now. And with that, Chief, I'm out of things to talk about. Luke, you have a story that'll be up on the website by the time people listen to this. And yeah, I don't know. Chief, get us out of here.
Yeah. I know nobody likes listening after a loss. Never fun. And I know vibes were low on Saturday night walking out of TQL Stadium, but like we've talked about, vibes are good. One loss on a rotated squad night when they'd played 3 games in tropical weather. Things are good. Don't worry. They got this. Keep the faith and go fuck yourself, San Diego.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Cincy Postcast. It is a production of The Post Cincy. You can check us out at thepostcincy.com or just click a link in the description to check out some of our written work. It also has links to our social media accounts across all sorts of different platforms, including YouTube, where we are trying to do more and more video content. Please, dare I say it, like and subscribe and leave a comment. But no, that would be really, really helpful. I also want to give a thank you to Jim Trace and the Makers. They're a local Cincinnati band who provided all of the music for this episode. We love having them on board. You can check them out. Again, link in the description of this episode to find out where they might be playing shows next or where you can listen to more of their music. Also want to give a massive, massive thank you to the awesome and very attractive patrons over on Patreon. It is a voluntary subscription that people take out with no real promise of anything extra that keep this show afloat. And we are so, so thankful to those of you that have decided to take that commitment. If you do like the show, or at least just want to engage with other people who have listened to the show and want to talk about FC Cincinnati, MLS, soccer, or really anything else, you can go on over to Discord. Again, link in the description. Lots of links in the description where you can find a link to the Discord. That's where we are keeping the conversation going 24/7. It feels like it's a really fun group of people in there just talking about FC Cincinnati. And like I said, just about everything else. And finally, I'll say it, if you liked this episode, and given the fact that you've made it all the way to the end, I have to assume you either like it or for some reason cannot reach the stop button. Please share this episode with a friend or family member or someone who likes FC Cincinnati. The best way for us to grow is from a personal recommendation from somebody who likes it. And if that's you, please tell other people. And if you don't have any friends, feel free to give us a review on whatever your podcast platform of choice is. We'll take anything we can get. But again, a huge, huge thank you to everybody for listening to this show. I am blown away that anybody listens to this. So again, I well and truly mean this. Thank you so much for listening.